The year 1893 dawned bright with promise. The sun rose over a nation brimming with optimism and ambition. America, a young giant, flexed its industrial muscles. Skyscrapers pierced urban skylines, symbols of progress and innovation. Railroads stitched the nation together, connecting distant cities and fostering commerce. The iron tracks were the veins through which the lifeblood of the economy flowed. Yet, beneath this glistening surface, a tremor of unease ran through the financial heart of the nation. Wall Street, the epicenter of American finance, was a cauldron of anxiety. The seeds of panic, sown in years of reckless speculation and overexpansion, were about to bear bitter fruit. Investors driven by greed had pushed the market to unsustainable heights. The panic of 1893, a financial earthquake, was about to shake the nation to its core. Banks, businesses, and ordinary citizens would all feel its devastating impact. It would leave millions jobless, businesses shattered, and the American dream itself in doubt. The streets would fill with the unemployed, and once thriving businesses would close their doors. The signs were there for those who cared to see. Newspapers hinted at trouble, and the more astute businessmen began to worry. Railroads, the very symbol of American progress, were overbuilt, their tracks snaking across the land, often leading to nowhere profitable. The overexpansion was a ticking time bomb. Banks, flush with easy money, had financed this expansion with abandon, their coffers brimming with risky loans. The financial institutions were playing a dangerous game. The stock market, a gambler's paradise, soared to dizzying heights, fueled by speculation and dreams of quick riches. But the higher it climbed, the more precarious it became. But the house of cards was about to collapse. The foundations of this economic edifice were weak, and the impending disaster would reveal just how fragile it all was. Railroads, the arteries of American commerce, were central to the panic of 1893. After the Civil War, a frenzy of railroad construction gripped the nation. Thousands of miles of track were laid each year, fueled by government subsidies and private investment. New towns sprang up along these steel highways, their fates tied to the fortunes of the iron horse. But overexpansion soon set in. Competition between railroads became cutthroat, rates plummeted, profits dwindled, and many lines faced financial ruin. The Philadelphia and Reading Railroad, a giant of its day, crumbled under the weight of its debts, declaring bankruptcy in February 1893. This event sent shockwaves through Wall Street and beyond, exposing the fragility of the railroad boom. It was a harbinger of things to come. The banking system, the lifeblood of the economy, was deeply intertwined with the railroads. Banks had eagerly provided loans for railroad construction, often with little regard for risk. When the railroads faltered, the banks were left holding a mountain of bad debt. The National Cordage Company, a trust that controlled most rope production, relied heavily on bank loans. When it failed in May 1893, it triggered a chain reaction. Depositors, fearing the worst, rushed to withdraw their savings, sparking bank runs across the nation. Banks, their reserves depleted, were forced to close their doors. The credit market froze as businesses, starved of capital, ground to a halt. The financial panic, fueled by fear and uncertainty, spiraled out of control. The Panic of 1893 reached its peak in the summer of that year. Businesses large and small buckled under the weight of the economic crisis. Factories shut down, throwing millions out of work. Unemployment soared to unprecedented levels, reaching 25% in some cities. Soup kitchens and bread lines became a common sight as families struggled to survive. The stock market, a barometer of economic confidence, plunged into free fall. Investors, gripped by panic, dumped their shares, driving prices down further. The gold reserve, the foundation of the nation's currency, dwindled as investors traded their dollars for the perceived safety of gold. The nation teetered on the brink of economic collapse. Section 5. The Domino Effect. Businesses crumble, unemployment soars. The Panic of 1893 was not merely a financial crisis, it was a human tragedy. Millions of Americans, accustomed to the promise of prosperity, found themselves jobless and destitute. The ranks of the unemployed swelled with each passing day, as factories closed their doors and businesses went bankrupt. The human cost of the panic was immeasurable. Families were torn apart as men traveled the country in search of work, leaving their wives and children behind to fend for themselves. Farmers, already struggling with low crop prices, faced foreclosure as banks called in their loans. The social fabric of the nation, already strained by rapid industrialization and urbanization, threatened to unravel. Section 6. A Nation Adrift, the Depths of Depression. The Panic of 1893 plunged the United States into a deep and prolonged economic depression. The economy contracted sharply, with industrial production plummeting by nearly 40%. Unemployment remained stubbornly high, hovering around 20% for several years. The nation seemed adrift, its confidence shaken, its future uncertain. President Grover Cleveland, a staunch believer in limited government, seemed powerless to stem the tide of economic disaster. His attempts to restore confidence in the banking system and stabilize the currency proved largely ineffective. The Depression dragged on, casting a long shadow over the nation. Section 7. Seeds of Recovery, the Greenbacks, and the Gold Standard. Amidst the despair, however, there were glimmers of hope. People began to see the possibility of a brighter future, even in the darkest times. The federal government, under pressure from farmers and workers, began to take a more active role in addressing the crisis. This marked a significant shift in policy, as the government started to intervene more directly in the economy. The Sherman Silver Purchase Act, though ultimately repealed, injected some much-needed liquidity into the economy. This act was a temporary measure, but it provided a crucial lifeline during a period of financial instability. The discovery of gold in the Klondike and South Africa in the late 1890s increased the money supply, easing the pressure on the gold standard. These discoveries were pivotal, as they brought a new influx of wealth and resources. Gradually, the economy began to recover. Factories reopened, and production lines started humming again, signaling the start of a new era of growth. Industrial production rebounded, unemployment fell, and the stock market staged a hesitant rally. This recovery was slow but steady, laying the groundwork for future prosperity. The Panic of 1893, though a traumatic experience, had a silver lining. It brought communities together, fostering a spirit of resilience and cooperation. It forced the nation to confront the weaknesses in its financial system and paved the way for reforms that would help prevent such a severe crisis from happening again. These reforms laid the foundation for a more stable and resilient economy in the years to come. Section 8. The Long Road Back, Rebuilding from the Rubble. The recovery from the Panic of 1893 was slow and uneven. It was not until the early 1900s that the American economy fully regained its pre-crisis momentum. The experience left an indelible mark on the nation's psyche. It shattered the myth of unending prosperity and underscored the interconnectedness of the global economy. The Panic of 1893 also had a profound impact on American politics. It fueled the rise of populism, a political movement that championed the interests of farmers and workers against the perceived power of big business and Wall Street. The echoes of the Panic reverberated for decades, shaping the nation's response to future economic challenges. Section 9. Echoes of 1893. Lessons learned, lessons ignored. The Panic of 1893 stands as a stark reminder of the fragility of economic prosperity. It was a time when the American economy, seemingly robust and unstoppable, was brought to its knees almost overnight. The panic triggered widespread bank failures, massive unemployment, and a deep recession that lasted for years. It teaches us that even in times of apparent abundance, the seeds of crisis can be sown through reckless speculation, overexpansion, and a lack of regulatory oversight. The unchecked growth and speculative investments created a bubble that was destined to burst, and a lack of regulatory oversight. Factories closed, construction projects were abandoned, and the stock market plummeted, leaving investors and ordinary citizens alike in financial ruin. The Panic also highlights the importance of a sound banking system, a stable currency, and the need for financial institutions to maintain adequate reserves. Without these safeguards, the economy is vulnerable to sudden shocks, and a government that is willing and able to act as a lender of last resort in times of crisis. The government's role in stabilizing the economy became more evident as it stepped in to provide much-needed support. The lessons of 1893, though painful, were not entirely in vain. They served as a wake-up call, prompting significant changes in how the financial system was managed and regulated. The crisis led to the creation of the Federal Reserve System in 1913, a central bank designed to provide stability and oversight to the nation's financial system. This institution was tasked with preventing future panics and ensuring a more resilient economy. A central bank designed to provide stability and oversight to the nation's financial system. The Federal Reserve's establishment marked a new era in American financial history. It also ushered in an era of greater government regulation of business, as policymakers sought to prevent the excesses that had contributed to the panic. New laws and regulations were put in place to curb speculative practices and ensure greater transparency. As policymakers sought to prevent the excesses that had contributed to the panic, these measures aimed to create a more stable and predictable economic environment. Yet despite these reforms, the echoes of 1893 continue to resonate. The lessons learned were not always heeded, and history has a way of repeating itself. The financial crisis of 2008, with its roots in similar patterns of speculation and over-leverage, serves as a stark reminder that the lessons of history, if not heeded, are often repeated. The housing bubble, risky financial products, and lack of oversight mirrored the mistakes of the past. Serves as a stark reminder that the lessons of history, if not heeded, are often repeated. It underscores the importance of vigilance, regulation, and learning from the past to build a more secure financial future.